Wristwatches. Since 1810, when Abraham Louis Breguet created that first wristwatch for the Queen of Naples, it has fired the imagination of what can we put inside something as small as a wristwatch. Then, 1926, Fortis comes out with the first automatic wristwatch. No longer are you having to manually wind that watch every day or two. Just wearing it keeps that spring charged. 1969 rolls around and Seiko revolutionizes the industry with the first quartz watch. No longer are you having to wind it or worrying about wearing it every day. It's got a battery and a small quartz crystal that keeps absolutely amazing time. 1970, Pulsar, they come storming in with the first digital watch. No hands, no nothing, just numbers. Look at your watch, there's your time. And now, smartwatches, they're everywhere. They connect you to your phone, to your tablet, your TV, your navigation. They keep you on that straight and narrow when you're hiking. It's amazing what we have done and what we have put inside something as small as a wristwatch. And with all that inspiration, I decided, why not make my own watch? Now, I'm no watchmaker, but there are a few watches out there that have such a huge fan base that the aftermarket parts availability for them is quite frankly astonishing. Cases, dials, hands, bezels, bands, whatever. If you want to build a watch the way you want it to look, you can do it. And that's what I've done. Now, when you guys see this watch, you might be thinking, that looks familiar. And yes, there's a little bit of an homage there, but with the YouTube algorithm, I don't want to say what it's an homage to. So any of you guys out there that recognize what this watch is similar to, just post it down there in the comments. Now, it did take me a while, but after tons of research, I found all the parts I needed, ordered them, ordered a few tools off of Amazon, which were quite reasonably priced, and I got to work. So if you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe and smash that bell. So with that being said, let's head over to the desk and let's put this watch together and let's see how it turns out. So first things first, we're going to start with the movement. Now, the movement I'm going to be using today is the Seiko NH35. This is an automatic movement that beats at 21,800 beats per hour. It is a date-only movement. Now, if you wanted to use a date and day movement, you would get the NH36. But the dial I'm using only has a window for the date. So the first thing you always want to do is check your movement. Make sure that it winds, make sure that if it has it, the quick date adjust works, and make sure that the time adjust works, including rolling over the date at midnight. So that's what I'm doing right here. Now, another thing to be aware of is a lot of these movements will come with white or black date wheels. Now, since most of the parts I'm using are black, I wanted to go with the black date wheel, as you can see. So next we're going to get the dial. And most dials are going to come with two sets of pins. And you can see I've cut and sanded down one of those sets of pins. There and there. Those pins are there in case your movement either has a 3 o'clock crown position or a 4 o'clock crown position. The movement I'm using is a 3 o'clock crown position. So these pins allow it to be set in the movement so that your date wheel matches up with the date window of the dial perfectly. And it just fits right on top of the movement, and you press it in, and there you go. Dial has been installed onto the movement. So next, and this is something I always try to do in between each step, is you take what's called Rodico. It is a putty-like substance that is excellent for cleaning small objects like watches or other small things. It removes debris, dust, fingerprints, pretty much anything from the surface that you're trying to clean. So anytime you do anything when putting a watch together, you always want to take care and clean those surfaces so that your next step becomes a little bit easier. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to start putting on the hands. Now the hands, they are press fit. There is a spindle in the middle of the watch, and it has 2 steps and then a bore. So the first step is going to be for your hour hand. Now I've already set the movement to midnight by turning the time adjust until the date window turns over. And at that exact moment it turns over, it's at midnight. This was definitely the most tedious and time-consuming part of the build. After each hand is installed, I always wanted to check to make sure everything was moving freely and that the date change would still happen at midnight, which is what I'm checking here. And you'll see as it hits midnight, that date clicks right over. So here I'm moving the hour hand kind of out of the way, and I'll put it on an hour marker, in this case 6 o'clock, and that'll make it a little bit easier to install the minute hand on the next step of that spindle. Using the Rodico to hold the hands did seem to help, as I wasn't worried about using a pair of tweezers to damage these hands, as they are incredibly thin and easy to bend. And you can see my hands are a little shaky, so my recommendation is don't drink any caffeine when doing something like this. Again, you can see me here checking, and you'll actually see that that minute hand is just barely touching the hour hand, causing it to drag a bit. So there was some adjustments needed to be done on the hands themselves. See there, it's not grabbing anymore. So next, we are going to be installing the second hand. Now, unlike the others, this actually has a pin in it that fits into a bore at the top of that spindle. And this was very fiddly, because if you don't get that tiny little pin inside that bore, that spindle just perfectly, you will damage your second hand. Here I'm just checking to make sure it is seated properly in the spindle. Nice thing about the NH35 is it does have what's called hacking, which means that when you go to the time adjust, it will stop the movement. And you can see right there, I was pushing the stem back in, turning the movement back on essentially. And here I am just checking to make sure clearances between all three hands is appropriate. Another round of cleaning with the Rodico. You can see even with the hands mounted, just barely touching it with the Rodico, and they want to bend. Now the dial, the hands, all three of them do have a C3 loom. So here, cleaning out the case, because this is definitely an area where there's a lot of crevices and areas where dirt and dust could be sitting, and then once you put your watch together, could get on the face or get into the movement and cause issues. So you want to take a lot of time, a lot of care, make sure that the case is completely clean using the Rodico, and then I've also got a little bulb that will blow air. So now after thoroughly cleaning the case, we're going to pull the movement out. So pull it out of the movement holder. I'm going to flip it over. Now, unfortunately, I lost the footage showing how to pull the crown out, but there is a tiny little lever just to the right of the stem that you depress, and then you can pull that stem out, which you need to do before installing the movement into the case. We're putting the chapter ring in, and now for the crystal, which is a sapphire double dome with red AR or anti-reflective coating on both sides of the crystal. And I decided to go with what they call the big chamfer, which is the edge, and I just like the way it looks. As you look across the watch, you get kind of two angles reflecting when you're looking into the watch face. Another round of cleaning. And you want to use your hands and manually start this into the case. That way it has its best chance of being pressed into the case flush. There you can see the chamfer on the top edge. Now all the tools, including this press, I was able to get off Amazon for, it was around $30, so really reasonably priced for the tool set required to do this kind of job. Make sure you rotate the watch after every press or two. That way it ensures that the crystal is installed flush. And here we have the crystal installed. I'm going to remove the little sticker. Give it a nice wipe down with a fresh microfiber cloth so we can get a good look at how the watch is turning out so far. So next we need to install the bezel. Now there is a spring that does go down first, and unfortunately I missed that in recording. And that's what gives you the click, and then also keeps the bezel from rotating in the opposite direction. And it will kind of just click into place as you press it on there. Now this bezel, because of its design, needs to be placed in such a way so that it lines up with the indices of the dial. That way when you install the bezel insert, everything kind of lines up the way it should. And of course, another round of cleaning. Because we are going to be using a double-sided tape, and I want to make sure that that bezel is as clean as possible so that when we install this ceramic bezel insert, it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. We remove the other side of the double-sided tape. And of course, like most things, when putting a watch like this together, everything's a little fiddly. Always making sure everything's clean. And then the ceramic loomed bezel insert. There's a lot of loom going on with this watch, which I can't wait to show you guys. Double checking to make sure that the bezel still lines up. And I think that's pretty good. Well, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed that. While some people might find that a tedious task, doing something that requires that kind of patience and focus, I really enjoy. Now, before I show you the watch, I will say that there were a couple of video files that unfortunately got corrupted, and that included the sizing, cutting, and fitting of the stem and crown. Also the installation of the watch band. So without further ado, I'm going to call this one the Red Sea, due to the watch that it is an homage to, and of course the red AR crystal, as well as you'll see shortly the red stitching on the band. So I think it turned out really nice. And one of the other things that you guys didn't get to see in the build was it does have a sapphire crystal display exhibition back. So we have here is it's kind of a nylon band, and it has, I don't know if you can see that, there's red stitching on the edges, and then the back of the band is leather. I'm extremely happy with the way this turned out, and I'm thankful to all of you guys who stick around and watch my videos and subscribe, and it means a lot. So with that being said, let's cut to the B-roll, which you'll also get to see the really cool loom that this watch has. So until the next video, I'll see you guys.